when do you first encounter Vince McMahon? You've met Shane McMahon. When do you first meet Vince?
Not until years later, because since the WCW invasion angle kind of failed, or it did fall, it did
Yeah,
fail. So like
yeah.
we sat at home for a few weeks, and then they opened up developmental in Cincinnati, Ohio, Heartland Wrestling Association. So I had to move up to Cincinnati, and at that time, they only had the one show with one roster. They had Raw and SmackDown, but it wasn't separated at the time.
Yeah.
And they picked up the WCW guys. They also picked up the ECW guys. So they had a whole bunch of wrestlers, and in 6 months they fired me. Like because I didn't get brought up to the main roster. So like, and then after that, I went to All Japan Pro Wrestling. So I started wrestling in Japan, and then uh, 2.5 years, and then I came back to WWE as a Keo,
Hmm.
and that's the first time I actually met Vince McMahon. So like, and seeing him coming down the hallway, like this guy looks like he has like an aura around him. Like his a aura. I'm like, oh my god, that's Vince McMahon. Like he's coming this way. Like oh my god, like he's a probably the most important person in professional wrestling. Like it's like, oh my God, this is Vince McMahon. Then once he comes to me and starts talking to me and gives me a handshake, like all my nerves go away. And he made me so calm. That was kind of crazy, kind of how that was, that was how my relationship was with him was. So
Because I mean, when you come in as a Keo, that's kind of at a time when it feels like WWE are starting to begin to get enthusiastic about cruiserweights again. So obviously, WCW was the home of the cruiserweights. WWE had never really had a great track record for championing cruiserweights or light heavyweights, but I think probably Rey Mysterio coming over was the game changer. And so that time there, you've obviously got you got Ray, you got Chavo, who you've worked with in WCW. You've got Tajiri, who you're going to get paired up with. So there's some real veterans, Ultimo Dragons there for a period. Like there's a obviously Jamie Noble's doing some great stuff as well. So it was a really exciting time for the cruiserweight division, especially on SmackDown.
yeah, for sure. Like, and that's the thing. Ray kind of opened the door for all of us to go there. But like even with TNA, the X Division, all that stuff started to catch fire. Like and they just see the demand for the cruiserweights. Like in the
Yeah.
and kind of the style of matches that we had, and it was awesome. Like all those cruiserweights were amazing wrestlers, and but SmackDown was definitely felt like the wrestling show, and,
Yeah.
and featured more of the cruiserweights. So.
Was Akio a Vince McMahon creation? Do you know who was behind that creative?
Yeah, really, Vince controlled everything. So like, it's
Yeah.
like I know they say all these other creative people and all this kind of stuff, but Vince gets the final say. So like, yeah, I don't know, I don't really know how that character came about. Like, I know they had Tajiri, and then they signed Brian Sakota, and then I was wanting to come back at that time. So like, I said, oh yeah, well, we can do this gimmick with these guys. Like, and then it kind of because it was so fast with me because I still wrestling in Japan, and they said, "Oh yeah, we're gonna sign you, and then you're gonna debut next week at the pay per view." I'm like, "Well, that's kind of quick, So okay, let's do it. And but then Tajiri was scared to do the gimmick because we were portraying the Japanese mafia, and the Yakuza has used to have a lot of ties in the professional wrestling in Japan, so like he was worried about that.
Right.
And then Ryan Sakota had an injury, so that faction kind of fell apart really quick. So
And so then, because I've heard you say that you share a record with Marty Jannetty for the most times being fired. So were you released, but before the Jimmy Wan Yang character comes in, were you released again in that
yeah,
period?
yeah, because Akio had like a 2.5 year run, and had a lot. The king of velocity, baby.
I loved Velocity.
Me too. That was my show. So yes, and then I got fired again. So this was like the third time I got fired, or no, second time I got fired, and then and then was working in Ring of Honor. I was actually having a really fun time in Ring of Honor because I started doing this uh, angle. I brought in the actor Bruce Leroy, Time Out from the 80s cult movie, and it was like that's my favorite movie of all time. Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon. So like we were doing this tag team, and it was awesome. And then got the call to come back or came back as Jimmy Wang Yang. So
So when you get the call for do you get the call thinking you're coming back as a Keo, or is it we've got this new slightly unexpected character for you?
yeah, so there's I'll go into this whole story. So I know a lot of people have heard it, but I'll tell it to your audience. So like I wasn't expecting to go back at all. So but I started talking to this really hot blonde. She was super hot. She was on the Diva search, everything. But WWE was coming to Lexington, Kentucky, so that was an hour and a half from Cincinnati. And I wanted to impress this girl. I'm like, oh, like I need to impress this girl. Hey, you want to go to the pay-per-view? Like the WWE pay-per-view, like get some good seats and all this kind of stuff, wine and diner. So I'm like, I say, and she's like, yeah, that sounds fun. So okay, let me hook this up. So we go down there, and I go in the back to go get the tickets, and like me and Vince cross paths, and we see each other, and Vince looks at me. He's like, Jimmy, where the hell you been? And I was like, uh, you fired me? I was like, what? I did? Are you serious? I was like, yeah. So we gotta talk about this. Just stay here. I got to go do this rehearsal. I'll be back. I want to talk to you. So, okay. I was like, did he not know he fired me? That's crazy. I started thinking about it. This guy runs $1 billion company. Like every day he has so many decisions to make. Of course, some things are going to slip through the table, so like slip through the cracks, so I go to catering, I get a steak and potatoes, start eating my steak, and all of a sudden all these people run into me and say, Jimmy, 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 hey, what are you doing? Eating a steak. I said, hey, can you come to ringside? I was like, yeah, okay, I'll come to ringside. So I go to ringside, and I don't know what pay-per-view was, but it was Vince versus God, right? And then something was
Oh
going on
yeah.
with the Spirit Squad and Shawn Michaels. And so they wanted the Spirit Squad to throw Shawn Michaels up in their finishing move and go through tables. Me and Shawn are about the same size. So they say, Jimmy, you mind doing this bump to make Shawn feel comfortable taking the bump? I was like, yeah, yeah, okay, like whatever. So I get in the ring, and Michael P.S. Hayes looks at Vince like, hey, Vince, you think Jimmy should do this? He's not under contract. And he should be under contract. Let him do it. And they toss my ass up and 20 feet in the air, go through the tables, like say, hey, Jimmy, what'd you think of how did that feel? I was like, yeah, I didn't die, so it's okay. So it's like, I told Sean, I was like, yeah, it's not too bad. You'll be fine, and then I get out of the ring, and and then I was like, okay, yeah, stay here. I'm going to talk to you after we're done. I was like, okay, so I go back to catering. I finish my steak, and I get the tickets, and I talk to the girl. Say, yeah, I got the fifth row right under the cameras. We're gonna have a good time. And then they come to me, say, hey, Jimmy, what are you doing tomorrow? Like I said, what I had planned. This is what I had planned for tonight. So I'm gonna have a long night tonight, and but I say, hey, can you come to Raw tomorrow? It's like, it's in Columbus, Ohio. So I say, okay, I'll come to Raw tomorrow. I'll put my plans on like hold a little bit. So I go to Raw, walk in, and it's like, hey, we got you in a match on Sunday Night Heat versus Charlie Haas. I'm like, cool, that's cool. I was like, okay. And then the girl's with me, and so I go put her in the stands, and me and Charlie go out there. We have an awesome match. So I was like, man, this is awesome. So the first night I got the girl tickets. Second night she got to see me perform. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm in, dude.
Well, yeah.
And then I get done, and they say, hey, Jimmy, what are you doing tomorrow? And I was, what I got planned? This is what I have planned. But like, hey, can you come to Cincinnati for SmackDown? It's like, that's my hometown. So yes, I'll come to Cincinnati, so. And then when I walk in the building, they grab me and say, hey, we're going to hire you back. I say, really? That's crazy. Like, this is my third time with WWE. You know, I'm like, man, it's kind of unheard of, you know. So, but I wanted to go thank Vince, like I said, because he's hired me 3 times. So I go to his office, knock on the door. Hey, Vince. Oh, Jimmy, come in. You know, I didn't even know you was fired. I was like, really? I'm like, so, oh, but whatever, the past is the past. And, you know, last time I didn't let you talk because you're this Korean dude that grew up in Georgia. But this time we're going to make a negative out of positive. I'm going to make you the Asian redneck. That's funny. And your name's going to be Wang Yang, Jimmy Wang Yang, because it rhymes. You know, I'm like standing there like, wow, this is really weird. You know, like, yeah, Vince, I'll do whatever you want as long as that paycheck comes every Monday. So yeah, I'll be there. So like, but thanks for hiring me again. So, oh yeah, no problem. Get out of my office. You know, so I get out of the office like, wow, that was really, really odd, you know,
Yeah.
with me and him. And I was like, realized that me trying to get laid turned me into an Asian redneck. You know?
But I mean, it's a crazy character. I mean, it's the thing is about wrestling. You never really know what's going to catch on, and it did catch on. I don't know, like how long did you realize like this gimmick is like really getting over?
No, that's you know, the test is like the airport test and like it's like the out in public test, you know, like I just remember like after the first week, like I walked into Kroger or the grocery store and everybody I get mobbed at the grocery store. I'm like, oh my God, this is, you know, I haven't, you know, I've had it happen in Japan, but like I just in my home or where in Cincinnati, I'm like, and then go to the grocery store and then I'll go get some, you know, gas in the car and people are starting to follow me. You know, it's like, what is going on? You know, like, and then go to the airport and, you know, would have to go to the airport like an hour early just to get through the autographs and the pictures and stuff to get to the flight. Like,
Um,
oh my God, this is people really love this character. I was like, this is it was pretty wild. You know, I didn't, you know,
but it's that theme music. I tell you that entrance music. That was everything.
no, that's the thing. People, I know people love that music, but I actually hated it for wrestling music, like
Okay.
because it was so slow. I couldn't get fired up
Mm,
to do what I'm about to do. I'm like, man, I need something faster. Like I do like country music, I like folk music, and but it's a time and place for it. It's
yeah.
like when you're relaxing on the porch, you know, sipping some whiskey or something, like that's the time to listen to that music. It's not the time right before you're about to fight somebody. You know?